Welcome.
Hello, hello.
So we are on episode 19 of Organic Reach X, and
Mhm.
welcome back. Um, Today, we're going to talk about productivity. Interesting topic, to say the least, because we have a lot of productivity tips that we hear, right? And
Yes.
there's definitely not a shortage of productivity tips nowadays because we live in a highly connected world that's filled with different technologies that ultimately can be a distraction, right? So, productivity is a hot topic for entrepreneurs, right? But
Mhm.
what maybe a lot of people know, but maybe not. But we'll talk about it today just in case, right? There's this one concept of time that when you understand it and experience it at a deeper level can skyrocket your productivity and creative time, right? Among many other
Yes.
things. It has many multidimensional benefits, right? So again, this is Anna Dornier and I'm with
Mubarak Nsekerije.
and welcome to today's episode. So, Mubarak, what is this one concept of time that we're talking about here?
Yeah, believe it or not, we're talking about living in a moment
Uh,
as a
yeah,
productivity hack.
yeah. And I know, Mubarak, without maybe going into details, you recently had an even deeper understanding of this. And as always, things happen like in synchronicity with us, right? It's like, oh, we were just talking about something completely different that has is relevant to today's episode. And then here we are. This is what we had planned to talk about today, right? So how important is it that we live in the present moment from your
Mhm.
experience? And maybe you can talk about it from your actual, like, recent experience of this realization.
Mhm. Uh, Thank you, Anna. The best way I can describe this and to make it as visual as possible, because fun enough, after that encounter, the things I went through, I had another realization, and someone, I don't remember who, but I was reading a book or something, and he talked about the same thing, uh, living in the present, and he said, "Can you feel your feet? Can you feel your feet where your feet is at?" He said, "If you can feel it, that's where you are at. That's the moment that you need to focus on. Where your feet is the most important place on the planet. But guess what? Most of us, we don't live there. We live
Mm.
somewhere in imagination, in the future, or past experiences, right? He said both of those things, they have their place, but the most important thing today in this moment is where your feet are, right? And yes, that brings that thing that was you said about where I was talking about how I don't know how white works that way, but you get a breakdown in order to have a breakthrough, right? And for example, in my experience, as we're talking about, I had a breakdown, but I found myself like, okay, keeping focusing on that event, that means that that event already is in the past, but my body, my feet was in the present, because that
Yeah.
breakdown is not a constant. It's an event that happens that it's like it's a car. You're driving and then you pass the location. You can't stay, you can't try to go back and, oh, I'm driving and you stay there. It's painful, right? So
Yes.
then I had that realization. I'm like, wow, right now is the most important thing, because it doesn't matter what breakdown, what experience I have, they already passed. So I was here at some point, they happened, but life moved on. Now I'm here, right? I was like, wait a minute, that okay, that it's in itself to remember that, which we all have the capability to remember that is the breakthrough that I had. I was like, huh, when if not now? It's a powerful question. whatever you have, anything you want to change, the question I have for you, when if not now that you're gonna change? Otherwise, you are either in a future that doesn't exist or in a past that you already passed, that
Yeah.
you cannot create or destroy anything from those point time frames, right? So you find then when it's true that the only time we create things, it's in the present moment
Yep.
where your feet are. So for me now, I have been trying to anchor it every time. I'm like, okay. What sensation am I feeling in my feet? Because just doing that exercise, you can't help it but be in the present,
Yeah.
because it just anchors you to the, oh, wait a minute, my feet is right here. So what's in this moment that is important? For
Mhm.
example, a good example, right now, my focus, my whole intention is just having this conversation with you, Anna, and creating this podcast. As soon as I
Yeah.
try to get out of it, I mess up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I want to kind of go further with your analogy. I like the analogy of like your head is somewhere else thinking about something else, but your body is here in the present, right? Because the concept of coherence is basically you, all of you, right? Your spiritual, your emotional, your physical are all aligned all in this moment. And of course the sun decides to come out right now while I'm outside. Uh, but I like that concept because this thing coherence, I think is important because when we're not coherent, so coherence is simply just an alignment to something completely and wholly, right? And so when we're thinking of some past challenge that's worrying us, it creates incoherence in our body. Like if we were to look physiologically, right, how our heart rate is, our blood pressure, all that stuff, um, they're gonna show incoherence. So it actually has a physical effect. We call it stress, right? When our body and our mind and our spiritual and emotional aspects are misaligned, right?
Mhm.
So then the stress when we're not able to develop that skill of coming into the present moment, it just creates even more stress. And then
Mhm.
before you know it, we have this habit of being in stress. And
Mhm.
then we live our life stressed out, and you wake up this way and you go to sleep this way, you know? So it's about what were you talking about? If we were to put a word to it, is coherence. Like, am I coherent at this point? And
Mhm.
usually when I think of coherence, I think of it as like, yes, all of my aspects are aligned, but also I'm experiencing an elevated emotion, right? Like
Mhm.
joy or happiness or um appreciation, right? So how can we cultivate that to
Mhm.
where we're at that conscious level? It's like, when we do, which our mind can think of many different thoughts, right, in a minute. I don't know the actual number, but if we can cultivate that, it's like, oh, I'm aware that I was not in the present moment. And what's a practice that I can do right now without having to do like a 2 hour meditation, right? To where I can get back into coherence. And first is being aware, and then having a practice of like, how can I get back and cultivate that coherence and live that as my default. Um, so I wanted to comment about that. And then the other thing that you mentioned, what was the second one that you mentioned? I totally forgot.
It's
Oh,
the
we can,
question. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
we
the
don't,
question.
we can only create in the present,
Mhm.
right? This was a powerful realization to me. I don't even remember where I first got it from. I don't think it was Eckhart Tolle, although he really reminded me about the importance of it. We can only create in the present if you really think about it, right? You can't create in the past. Duh, it already happened. You can't predict the future. You can create there. You can only create here. And so most of the time, like I said, if we're stressed, we're not all there because we're experiencing stress. We're kind of like out of body, right? That's the best way I can describe it. We're out of body. And so we can't really create. And so think about all the times when we're out of body and we're actually not here, all here in the present, and all the wasted time that creates in our life, right? Because if we can only create in the present moment and we're actually not living in the present moment, then that means we're also not creating most of the time. That's
Mhm.
such a huge realization for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Another way also to put it to show how important being in a moment, being in a present is very powerful. Uh, any other place you're going to be, being in the past or in the future, you're not anchored. You're like
Yeah.
a balloon, air, floating, right?
Hmm.
There is no supporting mechanism, right? But when you're in this moment, that's why it says feel your ground, right? Feel it. If you're in a chair, you can feel that grounding, that anchor, right? It's like when you see the ship, right? Think about it. The ship, it doesn't matter how big it is, the anchors can't be bigger than the ship. It's always the small thing that anchors that huge thing. Think about it, because you as a human being, you're magnificent. You're so big, right? Forget about your physical body, right? We're talking about all existence of you. It's so big, but you need this physical body to ground you, right? You now to connect to the ground is to feel that yes, I am here, and it's almost like a magic, like wow, I am alive.
Yeah.
Getting in touch with all these things, and which is when now gratitude comes in, right? Because you could be anywhere else, you could be somewhere doing something else completely, but you being here present, especially for you who is listening us, right? Or maybe you're watching us, right? Just think about it. You're here in this moment talking to us, right? And you may have a thought trying to go back and try to think about something that has passed or trying to go in the future, right? Remember that all those places you go, you're floating. The only place you're anchored in this moment, and that's the place you can create and manifest. You
Yeah.
know, just think about it. And Anna, she's going to walk us through an exercise, or we call it a practice, right? That really takes everything that we just said into a practical, into a technique that you don't need a lot, as she said, you don't need a lot of time. You just need to be aware and then practice it. As often you practice this, becomes part of you, and you just, when even you're walking, driving, you can just do it. And
Yeah. I don't know if
yeah,
you want to do it while you're driving though. You're when
there you
you're
go.
walking, it would be good, but when you're driving, probably not, because you want to focus, right? So
Mhm,
you mentioned about grounding, and you mentioned your feet as a grounding thing, which is a great analogy, right? But for this practice, for this technique, it's called the freeze frame technique.
mhm,
And this is actually not by me. This is from the Heart Math Institute. And if you're not familiar with the Heart Math Institute, they study the power of the heart so
mhm,
much. And what they found, one of the things that they found, among many other things, is, and this was again one of those pivotal moments for me where I realized that I need to be more in my heart because of how powerful it is. And so our anchor for this practice is going to be our heart, right? Because our heart is actually sends out I think it's like 6,000 times more magnetic energy compared to our brain. So if you can imagine, if you're watching, I'm just gonna like demonstrate it. The heart is like a torus, so like it comes out from here to the outside, kind of like curves out to us, and then all the way to our feet, and then comes back out again. So that's kind of the energy that it does. And that energy extends out 6 feet from our body. That's huge, right? So that's the energy that the heart can generate. And so when I realized just how powerful, much more powerful our heart is, and how much more information, right? Because with energy comes information, how much more information it has. I really became a fan of this technique. And then when I practiced it, I experienced it. It was a much more powerful experience. Like knowing it, again, going back to that knowledge, experience, wisdom triangle that we've discussed in the previous episode, right? Knowing it, it's like, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that about the heart. And then being able to experience the practice, the before and the after, it's like what a huge shift in like 5 minutes or less, right? So I was blown away, and I learned about this technique during the whole lockdown thing, right? I got into all this inner work stuff during that time and got really deep because like what else do you have to do during the lockdown, right? So so we'll walk you through it real quick, and we actually went through this step by step, and we actually went through get, do the practice, led the whole group to the practice during our reverse enduring success training. So we'll we'll link to that link in the show notes if you, or in the description if you're watching on YouTube, so that you can follow along and do the exercise with us. So but put simply, it's very simple, so you don't even need the slides for it. So first what you do is you don't even have to be in a quiet place. That's what I like about this, because like I said, Mubarak, you can do this anywhere, right? As long as you're not driving or operating machinery. So let's say you're in line at the doctor's office, or the DMV. Do you have DMVs over there in Canada, Mubarak? Okay, so for those of you that are not in North America, the DMV is where you get your car registration, driver's license, and there's usually a line. So I don't know if it's the same across the world. I haven't found out if that's the same case in Portugal. But anyway, you're in line. You can do this whether you're standing or sitting down. You can close your eyes. You don't have to, but I like that if I close my eyes, I can kind of minimize the distraction, right? So you close your eyes, you focus on your heart, and you start to imagine just air flowing in and out of your heart or your chest area. And that could take, 30 seconds to 60 seconds. And you're just going to feel more relaxed, taking slower breaths, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, so deeper breaths. So you can just start to focus on your breath and imagine that air flowing in and out of your chest area. Once you feel this is kind of like for me, starting that coherence, right? Kind of like I see it as like calling of all the energies wherever your mind was before, wherever your body was before, wherever your spirit was before. It's like you're calling them in all at this one place, right? So you start to imagine you're focusing on your heart, and just by this practice you're actually magnifying um the even more the energy of your heart, because you're focusing on it and you're aligning. If you need a visual for this, you're aligning your mind to your heart, and you're strengthening this heart mind connection. Because again, if the heart math institute says it generates 6,000 times more magnetic energy than your mind, don't you want to access that energy and information, right? So I see that as a strengthening of that kind of connection from the mind and the heart. So once you feel that connection, you start to feel more whole, you start to feel more at peace, right? Because you're starting into that coherence, you're now feeling less stressed. Um, you can now start to think of a regenerative emotion. So it could be like a special person that you love in your life, an event that happened, um, that you feel very proud of, it makes you happy. Maybe when your child was born, if you're a mom, or an achievement that you got at work or at school or something like that, whatever it is that helps you remember that feeling, that emotion. And then you really make a sincere effort to re experience it as if you're there, right?
Mm,
Sights, sounds, smell. What are you seeing? What are you feeling on your skin, right? What do you feel if you're sitting down? How does the chair feel? Like stuff like that. Make it as real as possible. The experience as if you're there. Who's with you, right? All that stuff. And all this can literally take a minute or so, right? And as you do this more and more, it's going to be even faster and faster. It's going to feel more and more real because now you're becoming making it your default. So you can stop there, and then you're going to realize, wow, 3 or 4 minutes, I shifted my energy. So do you have any question? I see that you're like want to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, it's we talked about it in the past episode of how important less is more, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
just think about it, Anna. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, five, let's say 5 minutes max to be able to change your state,
Yes.
right? To be able to calm your mind.
Yeah.
Like, just think about the implication of that in terms of productivity,
Yes.
because that's why people don't produce. That's why people are
Yeah.
not producing, because they're out of their body. They're somewhere in the future worrying, oh my God, how am I going to pay this bill? Oh my God, how is it
Yes.
going to be? Am I going to wake up tomorrow? Like, hey, you're not there. Why should you worry about it? Oh my God, my ex, I hope I don't see my ex again. All this is now you bring the past into the future and you're completely passing the present,
Yeah.
right? So now this exercise, excuse me, I'm choking even on this one, brings you to that. Just imagine 5 minutes max to
Yeah.
just be able to connect. And when you're practicing, as Anna is doing, saying, you're exercising the most powerful organ of your body, the heart, that
Yeah.
has almost, you said 600?
6,000.
My mind even cannot even comprehend it. I'm reducing it. 6,000,
Yeah.
right? Kilowatt. They call them what?
Just magnetic field. I don't think it
Yeah.
has an actual unit. 6,000 times more powerful than your
Mm.
mind. Yeah.
Think about it. So you're using your mind often now. You have 6,000 more powers that you can add to the creativity. Think about the what you can do. And again, as always, please reach out to us and share with us if you have done this exercise. What changes did you experience? And especially if you're doing something, you're a creative person and you're whatever you're doing, try to do before and then see and then compare the results when you're not doing it and see for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really powerful exercise, like you said, that you can do in 5 minutes. This is why I love it because no matter how busy you are, you should have 5 minutes. Otherwise, you don't have a life, right? You don't have control over your life if you don't have 5 minutes to get back into coherence. But it's a powerful tool, and we're stressing that to you today, and not just shrug it off and forget to do it after you listen to this episode because if you have and you do have, right, compared to like an animal like your pet dog or cat who doesn't have the consciousness to shift their energy, you do. And you have the power to go from stress to appreciation in a matter of minutes, right? And you have that. And if we're able to do that constantly, consistently, and now have this as our default, it changes everything, right? Because where your focus goes, your energy flows. So if you are focusing right here on creation and you are in this positive, joyful, calming, appreciative feeling, you're experiencing that, and that's your default. Just think, like, not many people function at that level. It's just amazing what you can do with just consistency, and just being aware. Of how you're feeling at that time and being able to shift that and having a simple tool, one of the simplest things. That's why we're sharing it with you because like you can do 5 minutes, you deserve 5 minutes, right? You deserve the 5 minutes that you can recreate your life with and redesign. So
Yes.
what we actually wanted to also say today is you can use this technique and stop there. right? And Mubarak already alluded to this earlier. It's like if you are trying to make a decision on something and it's a big decision, or you're dealing with a problem and you don't know the solution to it, it's really hard to think of solutions when you're in a stressful environment or when
Yes.
you're in stress, right? Because again, it brings you back to your mind, and your mind only has so much access to information, whereas your heart has 6,000 times more information, right? So you can use this when during those times. So if you're trying to make a decision and you're scared that you're going to make the wrong decision because you're not in tune with your heart, right? Or you're trying to come up with a solution and you feel like you're trying to come up with it with your mind, try this. So write down the problem or the situation, whatever decision you want to make, whatever answer you want to have, whatever question you want to have an answer to, write it down, and then do the practice. Same thing, same everything. The only thing is you're just adding one step of like whatever, thinking, acknowledging what that problem or question is before. And then as soon as you're done with that 4 or 5 minute practice, the freeze frame technique, it's actually the hard focus breathing. This is the freeze frame technique where you freeze in time and then you reframe your body, and then you think of that challenge, question, situation from this heart-centered feeling, this coherent state, and then you start writing what comes through. So you'll see, when we did this, you'll experience something completely mind-blowing. So we don't want to like predict what your experience will be, but when we did this exercise in our group, right, during reverse engineering success, they were like, it's so amazing how quickly I shifted from fear to knowing. Those were the
Mm,
words that she used. Knowing, right? Because your brain thinks your heart knows. Your heart already
mm,
knows. But the problem is we don't tune into the heart. We forget about the heart, right? So you can do it. I don't know. The first time you experienced this, Mubarak, what was your experience?
no, on exactly that.
Yeah,
Exactly that. For me, it's just like the anxietiness and that fear or uncertainty, right? And now having that knowing, having that certainty, having that
yeah,
clarity. Yeah, yes,
yeah,
that's what I got. So
yeah. That's the best.
it's from being scattered, like okay, then but now having really it's like when you have for people who wear glasses, you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter if it's short-sighted or long-sighted. When you put on that pair of glasses, it's like a completely new sight. That's what that exercise did for me, right? It gave me that clarity of okay, everything was clear, right? And when everything was clear, it was easy to make choices or decision, which gave me more certainty, right? Being sure that, okay, this is the right course that I need to take. Yeah.
As you're saying that, I just changed the title of this episode. So I think it would capture the title, the essence of what we just talked about today.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you're not certain, you move in fear, right? But when you're certain, you just go with faith, right? And you take action with faith. And when you're not making decisions based on fear, then there's no stress about it, right? Because
Yeah.
usually we just get stressed. We stress ourselves out by all these made up fears that we
Mhm.
have programmed into ourselves, up until this point in our life. And so this is just a tool for you to shift from fear to faith, and access the knowing that's already available to you in your heart. And so we highly recommend that you do this practice today, and then let us know. You know how to reach us. Let us know how your experience was. We'd love to hear about it. Any last comments before we end this episode, Maverick?
No, I just a little bit for the viewers who are listening. You heard what you said that we're changing the title of this, and so it's gonna be uh, different for you, the listeners, because you had the title, it was different. What we started with was different from what you saw, basically, right? But now you staying here with us at the end, you saw that imagined of how we work, right? We're always in the moment, right? We're always in the moment, right? So you never know what you're gonna get with us when you're with us in that moment, right? So
Yeah.
I thought I share that as an example of being in the moment, right?
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true because if we weren't paying attention, we just talk, talk, talk and not have a direction or intention. But we still are organic, but we just know the bigger picture. And then we catch, oh my gosh, we didn't even plan this, right? And now the title is more clear because we paid attention in the moment and we are able to create something that is more relevant to the
Yeah,
content of the episode. So that's just the
yes.
power of being in the present for sure. Thank you for recognizing that. So this has been
Um,
Organic Reach X.
we show you how to go with the flow organically in your business.
See you next time.